Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Jake, your resident content cowboy here. Yeehaw. Today, for Monday's tier list, I am joined by the incredible Crashy. Hi, Crashy.
Howdy, howdy.
Crashy's one of the best boss rush players out there. Their clan is currently third, or their squad, I should say, is currently third. I forgot to mention, it's Monday. On Mondays, we do tier lists. On Wednesdays, we wear pink.
I'm Mrs. Iglesias.
No, you're not. You were just out here and you put sunglasses on. Out.
But I don't want to.
Sir, she can have my seat, okay? Everyone should experience first class at least once in their lives, and Annie shouldn't miss out just because she can't afford it.
Help me, I'm poor.
All right, let's go over our tiers for today. We have our God tier. We always have one Pokemon that we put into our God tier. We're not friggin' Norse around here. We have our S tier, the say bye-bye boss tier. The A tier, our A Crashy approved pick. Our B tier. Still got the B tier. We have our C tier, the controversial picks, and our D tier, the don't you dare tier. So we're going to be going over the best Pokemon for Boss Rush, and then at the end of this video, we'll have a little match of Boss Rush as Crashy kind of shows the ins and outs of what is best. I've played a lot of Boss Rush, but nowhere near as much as you, sir. Crashy, why don't we start with a pick that we would say is an S tier Boss Rush pick?
Okay, easy one. Sylveon. Like,
Ooh,
I think
Sylveon.
Sylveon is crazy good for some of the synergies for other Pokemon that we'll put on this list, but also you run like CDR Sylveon. This mode, I don't even know exactly, but it feels like this mode gives you a decent amount of CDR, just lower cooldowns, faster cooldowns.
I believe it does.
And
yeah, that's what I've heard. Everything is on a lower cooldown with it, and it feels like it.
It's so fast. And the reality is, when you play the right build on this character, or what feels like the right build, close enough to it, you're basically having like a half a second downtime on Hyper Voice, and you're just shredding like constantly once you get evolved up. So Sylveon is incredibly strong in this mode.
Now, I assume when you say the right build, we're talking about Calm Mind and Hyper Voice?
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I find that special attackers are incredibly good in this mode in some ways that I didn't expect at first. At first, I thought it would be all attackers, you know, the Decidueyes, Greninjas, Cinderace. I thought they would really shine in Boss Rush, but I found that they haven't shined as much as a lot of the special attackers. I'm going to throw one up, and I am happy to be corrected as we go through this list because Crashy is the expert here, but I think Espeon is also an S tier Pokemon in this mode. I think it stuns the amount of the gauge that it charges. What is that gauge called? The stun gauge on the bosses?
The stun bar. Yeah, I call it the stun bar. Yeah.
Yeah, the stun bar on the bosses. I feel like this Pokemon is one of the best, but let me know if you think this should be in another tier.
We'll cycle back to my thoughts on this one because I would definitely shift it around, but I wanna get through the list.
All right. Great. Why don't you hit another one here?
Okay, so for any tier, does it matter?
Yeah, any tier.
All right, let's go ahead and pick up Garchomp, and unfortunately for Garchomp, it's the don't you dare tier.
What? Oh,
unfortunate. So, like you said a minute ago, there were some picks going into this mode. Like day one, we had a comp planned out, and then you get in the mode and you kind of realize what the mechanics are, what the boss abilities are, and you realize that it is just not nearly as good as you thought. So Garchomp was a big heavy hitter. We were planning on
everyone thought so, right? Everyone thought so,
and it just cannot get the job done. Melee in general is really hard in this, and so I'm trying not to give away an entire thought process here, but you kind of have to.
No, give it away now. Come on.
Basically TLDR, if you're playing a melee Pokemon, you are not going to get the job done as well as you could.
So the huge issue with melee Pokemon in Boss Rush is, first off, the bosses, most of the time they're doing the damage to you, it's with their basic melee attacks that the bosses do, and you have one Pokemon that is tanking all of that and running around the map while the rest of your Pokemon are able to output some damage and things like that. Garchomp gets itself in such horrible situations because it's standing next to these bosses while it's attacking, so you're taking hits that you shouldn't be taking. You're not even dealing as much damage as you would expect to to do as Garchomp. I also thought it was going to be a top tier choice, and it just really isn't at all. Now that we're talking about some Pokemon who maybe aren't top tier choices, I think a lot of the melee Pokemon fall into this category. One that I feel like is really low also is Charizard. I think it's pretty low. You could probably put it C just because its range is that much bigger, but I think Char is pretty low. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, not to expedite the video too much, in general, almost every all-rounder is really, really low tier for this. You could kind of maybe do the same thing for Dragonite too, right? It's got a little bit of range, so you could kind of put that near C tier. But like in general, like the rule of thumb, except for maybe and I guess I'm jumping to another Pokemon, except for Blissey, melee is just rough. Blissey definitely has a pretty solid spot. So let's go ahead and throw Blissey, in my mind, in the A Crashy approved.
Yeah,
Blissey,
seems about right.
Yeah, if you're running a support, Blissey is phenomenal. You can get a lot of heals. It really supports the team. You're going to take a damage loss, so I don't necessarily think it's the best strategy or the best Pokemon to use, but it is really, really good, especially if you're like solo queuing and you're just trying to round out a comp really well. Yeah, it's definitely going to help.
You know what will be fun? Later in this video, we'll just throw up a couple solid team comps too that Crashy has kind of seen work really, really well. We don't have much in the B tier right now, and that doesn't surprise me because this mode, I feel like, is either you're using a good Pokemon or you aren't. There aren't a ton of middle of the road choices here, so it's going to be hard for me to put a B tier choice up. Maybe this would be B tier. I don't know. It could be better. I'm going to put Alolan Ninetales maybe in B. It's fine. It's ranged. It doesn't do as much damage as you want. I don't know. Your thoughts, Crashy?
I think that's a pretty sensible place for it. There's kind of a strategy in a comp that I'm like messing around with, but the thing about it is you essentially have to look at Boss Rush in a couple different ways. You can play it for like points per hour, which is like leaderboard grinding, or you can play it for like the fastest like world record run. And so you essentially either do like a really heavy damage team, or you try to do like a stun like the stun bar kind of a team. And I think that there could be something to Ninetales when it comes to the stun bar team.
Using the ice build? Is that what it would be?
So we were even trying Dazzling Gleam and Aurora Veil to see if like the boosted auto plus the Gleam was helpful. It's something that we haven't experimented with a lot, but going into the mode with Ninetales doesn't feel terrible. I don't think it's super top tier, but it's also not something that we've experimented with as much yet. So Dazzling, or like A9 in the middle of the pack for B tier, feels really appropriate for now.
Nice. Let's throw another one up there.
Well, for B tier, I would probably say Pikachu for like almost the exact same reason. Pikachu's been a Pokemon that we've been running for a potential stun team. We've tried it again a little bit because what we end up doing is we go for this like stun strategy, and it like doesn't work as consistent over time. So then we end up going back to like our main strategy, and then we'll revisit it later. But Pikachu, same thing. We've been running Electro Ball and Thunderbolt, which is the second Thunder move.
Yeah,
I forget
the stun Thunderbolt.
Okay, so yeah, we've been running Electro Ball and Thunderbolt on it to try to like just fill up the CC bar or the stun bar as much as possible. And Pikachu does good range damage, can poke a lot, you can use a CDR build, so it feels pretty solid, but it's definitely not like the best.
I'm going to put up a Pokemon that I think is top tier. We talked about it a little bit before we started recording. This was one of the ones that I thought was just the best at shredding HP is Dragon Pulse Duraludon. The night one I was playing it, I was grinding this mode for 3 or 4 hours with friend of the channel, Peak, and I feel like once we locked in Duraludon as kind of our AD carry, that really made a lot of the encounters much easier. I'd love to hear if you think it's that high or maybe it should be knocked lower a little.
No, it definitely is. Duraludon feels like a pretty perfect character for this mode. You don't really need to hold the Dragon Pulse, you just tap it for some quick damage. You're really just using the spheres for like the percentage damage that it can do, and the character actually works pretty decently in like a stun team too, because you can put Stealth Rocks under the bosses and try to like start to fill the bar up. It's probably the Pokemon that speeds up the first boss kill the most too, from what we've tested. So, and the first boss is, I don't want to say it's the hardest, but it can be depending on which boss you get and like how it goes. because the first boss is all pre-evolutions.
Yeah.
So like your whole team is just like really weak, and Duraludon is just like really strong during that phase.
So which one stresses you out the most? For me, it's Avalugg. That one is just the most annoying because the shields happen, and that just slows down the entire encounter. You don't get to 50% as quickly as you want, but I'm curious if what you think.
I think it's funny. All the first bosses feel fine as long as you don't get bad RNG on Araquanid. Because Araquanid, like, if they don't do Call to Family too often, then you're gonna burn that boss really, really fast. And if the web RNG is okay, like if it's not too terribly like taking over the room, if like the players that get targeted are like in decent spots. Avalugg's actually not that bad. Dreadnaught's not that bad. Yeah, it just takes a little bit of like learning the bosses a little bit. Like learning how to play against Avalugg probably took me the most amount of time. But the tip to Avalugg, and this is what I've been saying, is hug the lug. The closer you are to Avalugg, the better, because when it does its shields, you can stand inside the shields and do damage to it. And then whenever it does its AoE, you just step out. So it's like if you...
I thought you were saying that I was the lug. I thought the hug the lug thing was about hugging me, and now I find out it's about this. This is sad. This is so sad. All right, hit us with another Pokemon.
All right, another Pokemon I'll throw out there is Trevenant, and I actually think that Trevenant is Crashy approved.
Ooh.
It's pretty good. You can, in the early game, your boosted autos heal you. I forget what the first like dash branch poke kind of thing is.
I think it's called branch poke.
I think, okay, yeah, I wasn't sure. That one will heal you a little bit.
The thing where you're poking with your branch, what is that?
Yeah.
Then when you're leeching with your horns, what are these called?
But yeah, so Trevenant has a pretty good amount of sustain, and then after you evolve, you can actually get the pain split, which is pretty helpful. So overall, I don't think it's the best defender, and we haven't really even touched on defenders and how they work in the mode, but essentially if you're running a team comp, you want a defender so that way they can hold aggro on the boss, because it's programmed in this mode that the bosses will target defenders if there's one that has like hit the boss. So it's probably one of the better defenders to run.
So yeah, let's talk about this. This was one of the things that I feel like people figured out pretty quick, and they understood what was happening in Boss Rush. It feels like you're playing an MMO and you're getting aggro from a big raid boss with your tank. So if you're playing a Pokemon like, oh, let's say Slowbro, I'm just gonna put him up on the list for now. We can decide where Pokemon go possibly in a God tier later. All of our S tier Pokemon are possible choices. Slowbro, I feel like, is one of the best in the game. You are ranged, you're a defender, you heal yourself with Amnesia and Scald. You could also use Surf if you want to use that to charge the bar up a little bit faster. So as soon as you hit the boss with one of your defenders, you will see the targeting change to that defender, and all you have to do as the rest of the team is stay away from that defender and let them tank all the damage while you do all the damage to the boss. Is that a decent description of what's going on?
Yeah, absolutely. The game has literally taken the defender role. Anything that falls under defender has a higher aggro pull. After that, it's a little hard to tell what the aggro pull is, but it feels like the most damage being done. So like we'll have like a Duraludon in a group with a Slowbro. If the Slowbro dies, it always targets Duraludon. Like it just, like, no matter what, it always targets the Duraludon.
Does it go? Does it not tier down to supporter next if you happen to have a supporter?
That I'm not sure. Maybe
Which I understand why you don't know, but
I was gonna say, well, because originally our comp was running a lot of Blissey and Slowbro, and then we started dropping the support from our group. So it probably does. I would be reluctant to say yes 100%, but I think that you're probably right.
Okay, cool. So there's Slowbro right there, and that's, you know, let's move through some of the defenders here while we can talk about them. The next defender I want to throw on this list, I think Snorlax is also pretty good, because it can do a good job early. You can rest, you have a little bit of mobility, but all of these defenders I feel like mostly pale in comparison to Slowbro just because it's ranged. But I think it's a somewhat reasonable choice, especially for the beginning, because again, you can recover your own health. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's in a pretty decent spot right there. I don't think any of the defenders can overtake Slowbro's position on this list, and the kind of like linchpin for defenders is whether or not they have their own self-sustain. So rest puts Slowbro or Snorlax in this kind of a position, and I think it's decent. Once you get block, you can actually tank a decent amount of damage too. And I would probably use Flail just to bring a little bit of extra damage to the fight, because you do want to just increase damage depending on what your goal for this mode is. As for other defenders, it's going to be hard to kind of keep up with these when you just don't have a ton of sustain.
Yeah. So what do you think? I mean, Greedent has pretty good sustain, I guess. Once it gets to level 5, you could use Stuffed Cheeks. I don't know if that puts it kind of closer to B, maybe, because it doesn't have it early.
Probably. I actually haven't played Greedent a lot in this mode. If I had to guess, I would probably put it B. It's got a little bit of early sustain. The thing about being a defender in this mode is that like Stuffed Cheeks kind of requires you to move.
Yeah.
And moving around too much in this mode is actually like it's just more of a DPS loss.
Yeah.
So I do think that it can get the job done. And as far as tiering it goes, we would probably put it comfortably here. But we're starting to get in that territory for a couple of different roles where it's like anything we start throwing on this list is starting to get like not very good anymore. So,
yeah, well, let's do it. Let's put the rest of the defenders up. Where do you think Blastoise goes? It is ranged, but it has no ability to heal itself.
It's probably C tier.
Okay.
And I would maybe put all the defenders either C tier or don't you even dare. And that's maybe because of the fact that I think any of these other defenders would maybe need a healer to get the early game done.
Which is unfortunate because it means that you're going to drop a Pokemon that's dealing damage. And really, the way I feel like you play this mode is you have one tank and then everything else is ripping, essentially. Yeah. So, okay, so we'll put the rest of them in C. It's not like you can't use them, but they really pale in comparison, specifically to Slowbro, but also a few other defenders on our list. Let's head into some of the supports. I haven't played around with too many of the supports outside of Blissey. I think I tried Wiggly just to see if it would charge the bar a little bit. I tried Mime just for fun to see if, Guard Swap and Confusion would do enough damage, or if Psychic would, charge the bar a lot because you could kind of get that stun there. But I haven't found a ton of success with them. Why don't you start stacking up some of these supports here, Crash, and just let me know where to place them.
Sure. So I would probably put both Wiggly and Mime I would probably put them in C.
Yeah.
We're getting to the point where they're not really going to hold aggro because they're not under the defender tree. They don't really bring a ton of support. They don't bring a ton of damage. And I think putting them C is probably just being nice as well, because we could probably put almost half the roster in like Don't You Dare tier.
Yeah.
But this is probably the most accurate just for the sake of separating them a little bit. They really just don't quite do it.
Yeah. It feels like you could use just so many other Pokemon you'd rather have. What about Eldegoss?
Eldegoss is actually really good. I think it's A approved.
Ooh.
And the reason why is because you can put a muscle band on this character, so you're actually going to bring some damage when you pick Eldegoss. You can bring a long-range shield that does damage, so that's good for the tank and for doing damage. And the Cotton Spore, is that the one?
The Knockup?
The Knockup, is that the one?
Yeah, Cotton Spore.
Okay, Cotton Spore actually does a decent amount of damage and hits the CC bar. So if you're playing like a CC team, Eldegoss is really, really good for that. Again, I think that strategy is hard to pull off and probably hasn't been explored enough, but Eldegoss is actually really, really good in the mode. Yeah.
Nice. All right, we're moving on to, well, we talked about our all-rounders a little bit earlier. Let's finish up with some of our all-rounders. I think most all of them are just really rough melee characters. Machamp, Lucario. I don't think they have a ton of value here. Zarina. Sword maybe is a little better. What do you think?
I would probably put them all in Don't You Dare tier.
Okay, I'm fine with it because of the melee issue. It really is a big problem.
So the way that you could, it's not even just the melee. Like it's because they're melee, but it's because if you're standing close to the boss or next to the tank, you're gonna get cleaved because the bosses will cleave and hit like in an AoE kind of cone.
Yeah.
So you can't stay there. So you have to fight directly off their hip. But then Zapdos and Regigigas do shockwaves.
Yes, and now you have to be
gigantic AoE.
Yeah.
So you either have to force your whole team to get really coordinated and stack up on each other for the benefit of having that Pokemon, which is still a good strategy. Like you should probably be stacking up on shockwaves anyways because y'all can sit in the same spot together without taking damage. But it's just inconvenient. If the character that gets the shockwave is melee and they can't quickly stack up, then they have to run out to the edge of the room, and then there's a DPS loss in it. I think playing melee in this mode, the problem with it is that it's just it's a liability the entire time. Even if it's something that could do well in the mode, it's just a liability, so you can't really.
I'm gonna
pull
put
it off.
Buzzwole here too, Crashy. I mean,
Yeah, I don't expect that Buzzwole's gonna be very good for this.
How
mode,
about
yeah.
Azu? Same thing, or does Aquatail give you a little bit more of a?
We haven't played it, but I would expect it's the same thing. Maybe Aquatail would give you a little bit of range, but at the same point, like once you get marked with Shockwave, you're gonna be in trouble.
So a couple other Pokemon that fall into this realm too are the Speedsters. Zeraora, Talonflame, Gengar, and Absol. They all feel like they're kind of in this realm as well. I don't know where you'd like to place them, but I don't find much value in these Pokemon either.
So if we're being very literal, I think Absol, Talon, and Zera are all don't you dare. Gengar, surprisingly, I think goes in B tier.
Interesting.
And the only reason why, and it's still a liability, the same issue doesn't go away, but the difference is that Hex Gengar, like Hex Sludge Bomb, you just spam and do so much damage. It's so strong that I want to experiment with it. Even now, like I think that there could be something there, especially if you and your team can get really good at dealing with the fact that you know it's melee. The only problem I've run into with Hex spamming is that sometimes when you like finish a Hex spam, the boss will slightly move and you're standing in front of it and then boom, it smacks you.
Yeah.
So like if I can solve that problem, the damage is there and the character is mostly off the field. There's even times, you know how like when the bosses will do like Articuno will do avalanche and then it does like the wind, you have to hide behind the avalanche. There's been times where like I'll wait out like maybe the first like 2-3 seconds of avalanche and then I just start hex spamming it because I'm off the field. Like it's not really going to hit me. It might hit me like once, but you can hex spam through that. So there's like little tricks that I think Hex Gengar can bring to the table. There's, like I said, there's something there. Don't have it solved yet, but it's surprisingly probably one of the few melee characters that's not like a tank or a support that can get the job done.
Speaking of support, by the way, there is one that I forgot to mention was Hoopa. And I think Hoopa is probably more useful than most of the supports because it is ranged, it does have stuns, its Unite move is pretty powerful, but I don't know how high that puts it on this list, Crashy. What do you think?
So we haven't messed with it much, but if I had to guess, I'd probably put it B tier.
That's what it seems like to me too.
I could see like a Trick Double Shadow Ball build being decent, but probably only just for the fact that there's like an SP drop, like SP defense drop. So like maybe that could be something, and like maybe there's like some way to use the Unite move in an interesting way. But you don't really need to portal people anywhere, so that's not helpful. And I'm not sure if the damage or if the stun from Hoopa's Unbound could help. That could be interesting. Might have to try practicing like stunning Regigigas to see if you could cancel some of its phases, because you can actually do that with Slowbro Unite move, which also is another benefit for Slowbro. So that's really, really interesting to think about, but I don't think it's like the worst support, probably not.
All right, let's talk about some of the rest of our attackers right here. Greninja is someone that I think is surprisingly not good. Maybe Water Shuriken's better than I think. At most, I could see this Pokemon in B tier, but it might even be C tier. I just feel like it takes so long to do any damage, and you're kind of comparing it to a couple other damage dealers early, but let me hear your thoughts.
I think B tier is pretty appropriate. There's a little bit of a trick with Water Shuriken, or with the duplicate.
Oh, no, Double Team. Yeah.
Double Team. Thank you. There's a bit of a trick with Double Team, but it seems a little inconsistent. Where if you have your Double Teams out, the boss will sometimes Shockwave the Double Team, and then when your Double Team disappears, the Shockwave also disappears.
That's pretty sweet.
So like, there's kind of a little bit of a mini exploit there, and I don't think that spamming Water Shurikens on like low cooldown is the worst thing in the world. I think the dangerous part is the fact that it just doesn't do as much damage as like other characters do, and then what we run into is like, if you're trying to like do a lot of like damage and you're moving around a whole lot, every now and then you'll accidentally boost it auto through the boss and then you'll get smacked. So like that was really annoying to deal with, although I think that's more of like a player error than like the character, but it's still something that can happen just because of the nature of the character. But it feels okay.
Okay, cool. Why don't you throw another attacker up here?
Sure. I'm gonna go ahead and pick Glaceon, and I think that Glaceon is A approved.
Nice.
So Glaceon has
probably
crazy
this Icicle Spear build, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it has crazy single target damage. And I think that if not for a couple other picks, it probably would be S tier, and maybe even is, because I've seen some of the faster runs that I've seen like posted on Twitter and stuff have featured Glaceon. So I think it's really, really high tier. And I could definitely see someone arguing S tier. The only reason I can't per se is because our current like best comp slash strategy we're using isn't running it. But we've tried like intertwining it every now and then with some of the picks that we are running and seeing how we like it. It just depends on like what you want to give up. So arguably S tier, A tier for sure. Glaceon super strong.
Nice. Let's see. I think Decidueye is pretty dang good. Not the best, but I think it's probably an A tier choice for ripping some damage there using Razor Leaf. I haven't even tried Spirit Shackle, to be fair. I mean, I don't know if there's any viability there, but I think it's pretty good. I don't think it compares with Duraludon, but I like it a lot. What are your thoughts?
It's weird. It's like the ranged Garchomp, and I want to feel like it's good, and sometimes it feels like it's doing damage and you're like shredding, and other times it feels like you're not. The other thing too is that like in the first round of boss rush, the boss, like there's like a little notification before you start the mode, and it'll tell you like, oh, the boss has increased attack and increased defense. And on this round, it actually is flipped. This boss rush version, like the block that we're in currently, has increased SP defense and increased SP attack. But we've tried comps to like be the counter to that, and it doesn't really seem to make a difference at all. So like we're on the SP defense, like increased SP defense, increased SP attack, and we ran a full physical team and it was slow. And we were like, wait, this makes no sense. So I think that of the range, like kind of like 80 carry Pokemon outside of Duraludon, because Duraludon just has like this big percentage like health kind of mechanic with Dragon Pulse, it's probably the best. So I could give it like the very bottom of A tier probably.
Okay, all right, fair enough. Where do you want to put some of the rest of these attackers? There are a few here that are pretty exciting, I think.
Yeah, so Venusaur is weird. I would probably put this as the only attacker that might fall under like high C or really low B.
Ooh, interesting. I actually thought Venusaur was doing pretty good with Sludge, but this is interesting to me.
Well, so I haven't. That's the other thing too, is I need to mess around with it, because like if I do Petal Giga, you're like a weird, like all roundery.
You're too close.
You're standing too close.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I could maybe see like Sludge Bomb and Beam being okay, but then I just feel like there's like way better damage options. And I'm not sure, you know, the other thing too is I haven't revisited Venusaur since having the full 7 black and 6 green page, because I didn't have that on the first boss rush run. So maybe I should give that a bit of a go around and see if like maybe spamming Sludge Bombs helps increase the stun bar. That could maybe
it does increase the stun bar a decent amount. That's why people were running it when we were playing it a bit. I didn't think it was amazing, but yeah, if you're running a stun team, it actually does okay.
I actually need to revisit this then, because with full cooldown build, I could maybe do Petal Sludge and just spam stun, like stun bar.
That's true.
And really try to see what that feels like. So there could be something here. I don't think it's probably the worst pick in the world.
All right, what do you think about Cinder? Where do you want it?
Cinder, you know, at this point, I think it's hard to put any of the attackers in C, so it's probably just about like where we would position it in B. It just feels like an okay, decent auto attacker, but I think everything attacker-wise that fits in this list is just going to get outclassed by anything else. Cinder feels okay. Like Blaze Kick could be pretty nice. Feint is actually kind of decent because you can like dodge out of some abilities. Like you could feint a Thunder from from Zapdos or something. So it just feels like it's like a Gren equivalent to some degree. I think Gren might be a little bit better, but it's hard to say. It's really hard to say.
Fair enough. How about Cramorant?
Cramorant, haven't messed with too much. I think it would probably fall B because you could cooldown reduction spam like Surf and Hurricane maybe. I don't think that the movement abilities like Dive, Air Slash would be too great for this mode. Yeah, maybe you could see something there.
That makes sense. I think Gardevoir is an interesting one because I think this one's probably pretty high on the list. I don't know where you'd like to place it, but this for me is probably either A or S.
So it's I'm trying to decide like where, because I'm also putting my comp, or like the comp that we've been playing, like pretty high up. Gardevoir is like a very in and out pick for us. Like we will sometimes use it, sometimes we'll drop it. Psychic is great for SP defense drop, so we've been using Gardevoir for that. And Psyshock has such a low cooldown that you can just spam Psyshock. Yeah. And so the character feels really strong. I do think that it's a little interchangeable, so we could probably leave it A tier. It does feel really good for the mode, and again, it's weird because I feel a little bad not having like more information about what every other boss rush team in the world is doing, because I don't know if they're playing the same things or not. It's hard to know, but yeah, Gardevoir's really strong. And
finally, Delphox. Where would you like to put the fox?
I think conservatively, we have to probably put it B for now.
Okay.
This is another one that needs to get messed around with a little bit, because I don't know what it can do with like full cooldown build and like fire spin maybe, or flame charging and just like pumping out damage, and like maybe it has a lot more potential than I've really messed with since getting some of the emblems. But it doesn't feel terrible, and I even want to maybe mess around with some characters with EAMP to try to see if I can get an ult earlier and try to use like something like that, because I think that this character's ult could be really useful, but ults don't usually matter too much in this mode. So yeah, but I think a lot of the attacker role just fills up the B tier for sure.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So you were telling me that you wanted to move some things around possibly in the S tier. What do you think? Where does Espeon fall for you?
Espeon is the god tier pick.
Whoa! It's the god tier pick. I didn't know that's where it was going. Yeah. All right. That was a good swerve. I thought you were going to drop it to A. And I was thinking, man, I really think Espeon's amazing here. It's weird because to talk about my god tier pick, it would be Slowbro. Just because I think it's far and away the best and almost only tank. But tell me your thoughts on Espeon.
Okay, so I thought that that's where you were going to go with it. And there's only a couple of reasons why I wouldn't give Slowbro S tier. The main reason being is that Trevenant is actually pretty good. Okay. So like it's pretty interchangeable. It feels like in every version of boss rush comps, you should have an Espeon, because Future Sight has a 10% of enemy missing HP execute. And so the boss will have like a chunk of health, and if you put Future Sight on it, boom, it just dies. So Espeon is doing crazy damage. Like the worst part about it is that this mode doesn't track damage. Like we don't get the damage charts at the end of the game.
I know. Don't you wish we did? I think that every time, because I think, man, I really feel like whatever Pokemon didn't perform in this one, but we have no proof.
Yeah, you want to test things out, but you kind of can, but you kind of can't know for sure. That said, when we've dropped Espeons from our groups, you can see it, you can feel it, and this character's probably doing 20 to 25% more damage than anyone else in the mode because of that execute. You're getting boom 10k damage for free or something. Like it feels like it's crazy. Whenever you see the boss has like a chunk, you can see it, and then the boss is dead, and you're like, wait, what? Oh, I get it. Yeah. So yeah, Espeon feels ridiculous in boss rush.
Nice. I love it. Well, here you go, everybody. Our boss rush tier list. Thank you, Crashy. And we're going to have a little boss rush game right now. We'll kind of talk through some of the more important strategy moments of it. We might talk about, hey, this is what the boss is doing right now, and we'll show a little bit of a team composition. Before we leave our tier list here, Crashy, why don't we just put 5 Pokemon up into our god tier that you think make a very solid boss rush team?
Cool. So yeah, I'll just put up our comp that we've been playing. So you can put up all the S tiers if you want. And then last but not least would be Gardevoir. That's what we've been playing. It feels really, really strong. It requires the DPS characters not to take a lot of damage on themselves, and the Slowbro just has to manage his own health. But there's a lot of SP defense drop in this. There's percentage damage in this. It kind of hits like a little bit of everything that you would want for shredding big numbers.
Awesome. All right. I love you all. I'll see you in the video. The next thing in the video. Okay. So this is interesting, Crashy. I've been running Fluffy Tails when we started playing this, but I don't know if that's actually needed.
Yeah, it feels like it's between Fluffy Tail and X Attack, and we kind of just like let people run whatever they want. Okay. When I play damage, I've been playing Fluffy Tail, but I also requires you to like get in close and use it and then not die. So
that makes sense. Well, I'll be playing X Attack here on Duraludon, one of my favorites. I'm just running a critical hit build, 2 crit items, and a muscle band. Crashy, what do you run on your Slowbro?
So I've been messing around with it a lot lately, trying to add more damage to it, trying to be more tanky. The most consistent thing I've done so far is just double band Buddy Barrier. Gives me auto attack damage and then make sure I'm tanky enough to not die early. Nice. So that's been pretty helpful. Yeah, that's what I'm rocking right now.
Awesome. So we're going to head in here, and Crash, you can tell me your thoughts as we're moving through this. Obviously, like I was saying earlier in our video, one of the first things is just making sure that your defender starts tanking, and then once your defender starts tanking, kind of walking away from it, continuing to do all the damage that you can against the enemy. Dreadnought's a pretty easy boss, I would say.
Yeah, Dreadnought's a pretty good one to get. Really, my goal right now is just like hoping that nobody on the squad that's a DPS takes too much damage, and then I try to make sure I'm kiting and like using my potion slack off to get to a berry, which I'm probably gonna take here in just a second. So yeah, I just grabbed the first berry, and I try to make note of what time that we got the berry, so that way I know whenever it's gonna respawn. I took damage right there because I'm not very good at this game.
I think you're pretty good at it.
Thanks, man. We're actually making really good time, so that's good.
One of the best. One of the best. I got my stealth rocks right now. So as we talked about earlier, Duraludon is just constant outputting damage onto the Pokemon. Stealth rocks is a little
I do need
unfortunate.
to get away from you, though.
Oh, yeah. Stealth rocks is a little unfortunate with Zapdos at times because it can kind of run away from them, but...
Yeah. And, like, my goal as tank is I try to stay still as much as possible to make sure I'm giving DPS the, like, damage output that they need, because, like, Hyper Voice and Psyshock for Guardy can be a little rough if the tank is moving around too much. But at the same time, I do have to kite and grab berries, so you'll see me doing that from time to time. And we're off to the Gigas.
We're off to the Regigigas. So a question for you. When do you try to use your Unite move? Just right when it comes up? Do you have any thoughts there?
So usually if you're having a really good run, you won't get one. So if we're doing really, really well, we probably won't get one at all. For Slowbro, we can stack up center room here. We can.
Oof, I'm not there in time.
If you can make it, cool. If not, totally fine. So yeah, you either, for Slowbro, you either want to use it to like cancel one of the Regigigas moves, or if you do get it, then you can just use it. Like right now, I have one right now, and I can probably just use it now just because we're going to burn. Cool, just a little under a 3-minute remaining finish. Not a bad run.
And it's over. It ended so quick. I mean, I couldn't even see what was happening, Crashy. I didn't even get to know what was going on. What is happening? Oh, that's a good impression of me. That's pretty good. There you go. A little bit of a boss rush with Crashy. He was just tanking the damage the whole time, and the rest of us were lighting these Pokemon up. There you go, everybody. I want to thank the Crashy's community members, Webafe, Dopeness, and Gibble for hopping in there with me. Thank you all so much. There you go. A little bit of a boss rush tier list and a boss rush game. Thank you all. I love you, and I will see you all next time.
Help me, I'm poor.